And there we go. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, as I mentioned previously, we are going to be taking a bit of a break from Shadowrun Dragonfall because I'm gonna be honest here. I most likely went into the final dungeon somewhat underleveled. Well, not underleveled, but with worse gear than what I should have. I definitely don't have enough armor, and I get folded whenever I open some doors. So until I decide to, first of all, get me a lot more trauma kits, and secondly, get myself a better armor, then we should be golden. Until that time, how about we take a brief look at World of Darkness. Specifically, Old World of Darkness, and specifically yet more, as you've probably seen from the game that is listed here, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest. Because let's be honest, everyone and their grandmother has played Vampire the Masquerade game, specifically the old-time classic that is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. So how about we break it up a little bit? We'll play Werewolf the Apocalypse first, and then, if people would like it, and when the spooky month rolls around, we'll play Vampire the Masquerade visual novels, specifically the New York trilogy, also known as Coteries of New York, Shadows of New York, and as of recently, Reckoning of New York. I played the first two games, and I can tell you with certainty that they are very good. However, for this one, we are going to be diving in somewhat unprepared. This will be a nice first-time experience for everyone involved. So, let's see if the software will be able to capture this game. If not, we'll see what can be, rather I will see what can be adjusted. Let's see, there we go. Alright, it's capturing properly, or as properly as it gets. Okay. And let's adjust the screen resolution a little bit. This might take a little bit, but it'll be worth it in the end, I can assure you. So give me a moment. 1600 by 900, and should be, there we go. There. Looks good to me, 1920 by 1080, and we will of course tone down the music somewhat, like so. Maybe even a little bit more. Yeah, this should be good. Well, it is full screen now, so we are good. And off we go. Prologue, Premonition. This is a game about rage and how it helps us do things that need to be done, as well as things that we later regret. Sometimes both. How do you feel about that? Well, that's a tough question, especially because I am a person that is not too easily angered. So that's something that I will need to control as well. Well, I prefer to think before I act. Your rage is low. So, you're the observant and cunning type? That's okay. There is no right path here, just your decisions and their consequences. Let's just follow the path and see where it takes us. The woods are full of stars. They flicker, come closer, run away. They want me to chase them, to play hide and seek. I observe. I watch as they dance around the tree trunks, float up on the gusts of wind that shiver through the branches, disappear among the leaves. There are words in their dance, but I don't understand them. Not yet. Then they bunch up and fly toward me like an arrow. Rushing down, they're soon upon me, but just before the spear of light pierces my breast, they disappear, and the dark of night returns. In the darkness, the spirits keeping the forest alive whisper about the enemy. I begin to move, unnoticed, one with the night, and then I wake up. Confused, I open my eyes. The forest around me is thick, dark, and reeks of decay, to such an extent that it's hard to breathe. I recognize this forest. I know this place. I've been dreaming about this forest since I was a child. The tree trunks, wrapped tightly in dark ivy, are covered in ripples of lichen where the vines haven't taken hold. The thorny, leafless bushes at their base are overrun with nettles. The fungi radiate with a ghoulish, sickly green light. Dark, sponge-like mushrooms cling to the fallen trees. I try to breathe. I take a deep breath and suddenly realize that it's not the forest that smells so foul. It's me. I look down and see my hands covered in a dark substance. I'm naked. A sticky, glistening film of liquid is clinging to my skin. I can feel it on my face, on my hair. Blood. I am alert. Nature is never quiet. The leaves rustle in the wind, small creatures scuttle in the undergrowth. There is a whisper. I don't understand what it means, but the word resonates in my head. Garu. Who said that? There's a severed head right in front of me. Some choices are hard to make, and they strain your willpower. I have willpower to spare, so I wince and touch it. Overcoming my disgust, I gently touch its wet hair and watch as the head topples over. The face is contorted, the eyes bulging, the mouth open as though the head were still struggling for air. I look at it and start to laugh. And then eyes open in the darkness. Who is it? I can see their silhouettes, shades of jet black against the darkness. They smell of fur and moss and bloodied earth. Massive creatures, some with horns, some with antlers. Their eyes burn like small fiery windows into hell. I look at them and something wakes inside me. Defiance. They tell me stories of their lost battles and dying hopes, and I say, no! I tell them my stories of the enemy and how they are so stupid, so clueless that we almost feel pity as we kill them. They listen and laugh. I laugh with them. In a moment of clarity, I almost understand what the forest wants from me. And then I wake up. Chapter 1. Arrival. Maya? Maya? Maya, wake up! I opened my eyes. My neck was stiff. I stretched lazily as I addressed where I was out of the corner of my eye. I wasn't in a forest anymore. I was in a bus. The sun streaming through the windows was making it hard to see. The girl next to me was touching my shoulder, disturbed. I comforted her. It's all right. I squeezed her hand to comfort her. She looked at me concerned. You are laughing like maniacally. I blinked. The memory of the dream was still there, and the taste of blood in my mouth. I looked outside. Trees were pushing against the narrow road, their boughs tangled, their trunks carpeted with moss. It was the forest from my dreams. We're almost there, said the girl next to me. Her name was Anya. We'd met a couple of weeks earlier on the orientation day. She was from Norway, a tall, broad-shouldered, calm person who wore her long hair in braids. Somehow I had managed to talk her into this crazy field trip across the land of my ancestors. She seemed excited. Anya reached into her backpack and took out 2 apples. I'm really happy we decided to come here, she said. Yeah, I said, offering her some of my kabanosi, dried, meaty sausages that were so much better than the original Polish ones back in the US. I was glad Anya had decided to come with me. I had problems keeping friends around and really needed one. I did some searching, she said from over her phone, and this place is amazing. The last primordial forest in Europe. And as you can see, Maya, our protagonist here, is a descendant of Polish migrants to US. This trip was my idea. Our summer language course was starting in a few weeks, and I managed to talk Anya into skipping the tours of concentration camps and old churches and visiting Białowieża National Park with me instead. So far it's beautiful, she said, her eyes smiling. But why are we here again? Good question. Why were we here? There being Białowieża, a small village in northeast Poland near the border with Belarus. It was famous for its national park, the very last European bison, and, according to quick web search, Occasional tensions between far-right troublemakers and the local Belarusian community. The most honest answer would have been because I've been dreaming about the forest in Bialovesia since I can remember. But people didn't understand when I said things like that. I looked her in the eyes. I kept it simple so I wouldn't freak her out. I'm looking for my roots. I kept it simple so I wouldn't freak her out. What I didn't tell her was even more important. I knew my family was from there. None of my relatives spoke about it, though. There were a lot of things that weren't spoken about it, though. There were a lot of things that weren't spoken about in my life. Strange dreams that plagued me. Half-forgotten tales about forests and wolves that I had heard before my mom took me, ran away, and cut off all contact with my dad and his family. I waited for her to respond. Anya fell silent for a moment. I think it's great that you've come from such a magical place, she smiled. The last ancient forest in Europe, thousands of years old. I wasn't sure if I was fond of that magic, but it was hard to ignore. And that was precisely why I needed to do something, anything, about my future, that damn forest, and my weird-ass family. I had a clear goal in mind. I wasn't there by mistake. I planned this trip for months with a clear goal in mind. I had to learn the truth about my roots. My grandfather's stories, the secrets, my mother running away, there was a mystery in my past. It was time I uncovered the truth about who I was. There was a mystery to uncover and an adventure to be had. I couldn't wait. Welcome home. Bialovesia looked like an overexposed photo of a village with a contrast turned all the way up. It was a hot, sleepy day on a hot, sleepy street, and everything, the old trees, the yellowed grass, the weathered wooden houses, the fences, seemed almost normal. Everything except the shadows. They were sharp, as though they were freshly printed with the darkness of inks. And they moved. For a second I could have sworn they'd moved, but then I realized it was just a black cat walking down the sidewalk. When it saw me, it stopped in its tracks. I tried to pet it. "Here, kitty kitty," I said, squatting, reaching toward the cat. It rammed me affectionately with its head and started rubbing against my legs, totally ignoring the outstretched hand. "Hey, Maya," Anya said, looking at me surprised. "Didn't you say a friend would be waiting for us?" But he wasn't there, and the cat was still staring at me. "Let's go." Anya put on her backpack. "I'm tired and I really, really need to find a toilet." For a moment I was tempted to just get out of the sun and worry about my missing friend later. But the meeting was just too important. "Let's just wait a little longer," I said. "I don't have his number and we really need to meet up with him." His name was Bartek. I'd met him online while researching Bialovesia. The man knew everything there was to know about local history. I asked him to check if anyone in town remembers my grandparents. I hope he's found something. "I really need to pee," Anya said, like it was I was a 5-year-old, and not a very bright one. I caved. "Okay, let's go." I grabbed my backpack and stormed off, angry at Bartek. Bartek, Anya's tiny bladder, and the creepy cat. Bialovesia had a few hotels and hostels, but the preferred form of accommodation was bed and breakfast. That's where we stayed. I found one that was nice, clean, and had that good reviews. We had a room on the second floor with a huge window and a great view of the forest. We dropped off our stuff and freshened up a bit. "Maybe we should have waited for your friend," Anya asked, concerned. I shrugged. "I'll find him sooner or later." "Before you go, check out your character's sheet. Look for it in the upper right corner of the screen. You can find a load of useful info about Maya, her background, personality, goals, and so on there. You can also check who your friends and who your enemies are." Let's see. Name, Maya Borodic. New, age 24, profession, student, nationality, American. Personality assessment. Brave, 0. Inspiring, 1. Analytical, 1. Spiritual, 4. Cunning, 1. Mind and body. Condition: healthy. Goal: mystery. Learn your family history. Pursue to regain willpower. Relations: Anya, friendly. Family: it's complicated. Sounds understandable enough? Should be at least as comprehensive as your typical Werewolf the Apocalypse game. But let's get on with it. Bielaveja was a quaint tourist town, but I had other things in mind. I had a clear goal in mind. My family was entangled with this town in the forest. I had to uncover my roots. The town my ancestors lived in, or the forest I dreamed about. Let's pretend to be normal at first and walk around the town. We'll meet up with Bartek, first things first. As we walked through town, tourist, we decided to take a look around. Our first achievement unlock. As we walked through town, Anya nudged me and pointed at a tall, broad-shouldered, freckled guy standing at the bus stop with a lost expression on his face. I remembered his face from the pictures on social media. It was the friend who'd stood me up earlier. I was glad to see him. Bartek? I waved to him and smiled. Sorry I missed you earlier. Maya, what are you doing here? He blurted with surprise when he saw me. I was sure you were coming in the later bus. We started walking and talking. His accent was broad and East European. Kinda like mine, I suppose. I flooded him with questions. Luckily, he loved talking about his home, so when I flooded him with questions, he kindly obliged. He talked about how the village had become a tourist destination, how the logging business moved to a nearby town, how the trains had stopped coming and the local station had been turned into a hotel for wealthy foreign hunters. The dozens and dozens of bison statues scattered around the village watched us indifferently. We walked along the only street in the village, near in the center, if you could call it that. Every house had a garden, and the air was dense with the fragrance of flowers. I took a deep breath. So, did you manage to trace the name I gave you? I asked. Bartek shook his head. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Sorry. He was avoiding my eyes. A trickle of sweat ran down his temple. He was clearly lying to me. But why? Come on, man, I said. You wrote to me that you'd found something. But he just climbed up. You know what? I think you should drop it. I stopped. He was scared of something. I turned to Bartek and touched his arm. What's sitting at you, man? He shrugged and shook his head. You can tell us. Anya added gently. I taunted him a bit. What are you afraid of? I spread my arms. Little old me? The game tracks your decisions on how Maya approached problems. They will accumulate and gradually reveal what kind of person she is, deep in her heart. The story changes to reflect Maya's personality. Well, he brushed his forehead with the back of his hand. I did ask. I started with the old people here. I told them that my friend from the States was looking for her roots and wanted to know about the place her family came from. You know the drill. At first, people were very, receptive. I waited for the other shoe to drop. And then I mentioned your name. He shook his head. I urged him to continue. Bartek, no dramatic pauses, please. The tension is killing me. One of the old men here told me to go to hell, the other spat on the ground, and his wife crossed herself. For a moment, he looked younger and smaller. And then my own grandmother told me to stop asking. She said something else as well. I tensed up. What? She told me to pray for you. Suddenly, the sweet golden afternoon wasn't so sweet and golden anymore. Who was I? I looked at Bartek and I saw that the stories he'd heard had clearly strained something between us. He was afraid of me. Who was I? We walked in the silence, but my mind was in overdrive. People didn't want to talk, and that could only mean one thing. I was on the right track. Hint. People were scared of my family. My pulse quickened, and I tensed up like a hound that smelled blood. I was on the right track. Every time you learn or do something significant that brings you closer to your goal, you regain willpower. Doesn't bode well? I mean, it's World of Darkness. Nothing ever bodes well if you're in the know. I was ready to see some sights. Time to see the sights, I nodded at Bartek. Show me everything this place has to offer. We walked through the village, bathed in the sharp rays of the summer sun. It was a lazy afternoon, disturbed only by the occasional passing car throwing up clouds of dust that hung in the air long after the vehicle was gone. Anya was walking close to Bartek, asking him about every little detail in the village. People were relaxing or working in their yards, dogs were barking, and every cat we passed froze to look at us. People went about their day, though, giving us wary stares from time to time. The cats behaved strangely. What's with the cats? I asked as we passed a tabby who stopped in the middle of the sidewalk to meow at us. I don't know. They're cats. Maybe they want to make up for the villagers' manners. Bartek shrugged. You know, some people are wary of newcomers. Honestly, high rage allows Maya to overcome many obstacles, but also makes her aggressive and hard to control, so I think we can dare say I was curious why. Why? I asked candidly. It's complicated. Bartek scratched his neck, embarrassed by the topic. There's a small conflict around the forest, you know, and it's attracting some weird people. Activists, reporters, bored rich kids. He said as though his dad didn't own multiple businesses. People like that. People like that. And they're getting on the locals' nerves. I noticed Anya frowning. Anya looked skeptical. I looked the conflict up online, she said, and it didn't look so small. It looked pretty important, actually. For a moment, Bartek looked like he was lost for words. Well, you're not one of those crazies and you're like almost local, he smiled. So what would you like to see in the village of your ancestors? He spread his arms as if to show me all of the splendor the village had to offer. What do you suggest? Cats were watching my every move as we walked along the empty streets. Let's see, village center. New friends, hidden tensions. Old cemetery, family graves, mysteries of the past. Abandoned railway, lost hopes, strange dreams. That is an interesting choice. And I think I would honestly go with... since it's afternoon... How about village center? We can visit the old cemetery at night, as is tradition. This is such a nice village, exclaimed Annie as we walked through the nice, quiet street. Nothing moved. The heat was stifling. The village was really quaint. It's quaint, I carefully admitted. Is that a nice way of saying it's a shithole? Bartek made a disgusted face and we burst out laughing. I was thirsty. Let's get something to drink, I proposed. I'm parched. The local store was a large mini-mart with all kinds of goods, from beer and vegetables to notebooks and pens. There was a bench near the entrance and on it were a few local drunks. I prepared for myself for a confrontation, but nothing happened. They threw me an appraising glance, murmured something, and let us be. I addressed the threat. They're drunk and no threat, I said, assessing the situation. We can always walk away, and if they try to stop us, all it'll take is a firm push, one or two kicks, and then we can make a run for it. Why do you even plan things like that? Anya shook her head in disbelief. My stepdad sent me to a self-defense course when I was 12, I shrugged, to help me with my anger management issues. We spent some time inside browsing the Latvian, Lithuanian, and Belarusian goods. Why was there almost nothing Polish here? And who in their right mind drinks coriander soda? I was putting the soda back on the shelf and I heard a commotion coming from outside. Loud voices. Some slurs, some curses, and a clear, mockingly polite, "I'm so sorry, darlings, I don't understand. Do you like my skirt?" Fuck, Bartek murmured under his breath. I looked outside. There was someone standing next to the drunkard's bench. They were definitely not local. The person was old. Not helpless granny old, but old, with deep wrinkles and a narrow mouth. They had the unisex grace of a tired, heroin-preserved rockman. Their shoulder-length, disheveled hair completed the look, as you can see over here. You know what I gotta say, I totally dug their style. They had a peculiar style, fashion that you rarely see even in the US. It looked great on them. They had a clean shave and eyes highlighted with eyeliner. Their nails were painted in bright blue, they wore heavy army boots, an outrageously red skirt, a tank top, and lots of leather jewelry. On their bag were pins. Lots of pins. All kinds of LGBTQA plus flags, anarchist and pacifist symbols, and I think some German band stripes. Mom would have told me to stay out of it. Don't get involved, my mother always told me. You keep getting into trouble. You don't want to get into trouble abroad where there's no one to help you. But that was the problem, wasn't it? I always managed to get involved. I just couldn't let it go, even now. I approached the foreigner. I smiled and, ignoring the man, approached the foreigner. "Hi, I'm Maya. I just got here," I said. They looked at me with a serene smile. "Nice to meet you, Maya," they said with an unmistakable German accent. "I'm Kim." Yeah, we can always trust an anarchist. We started talking. "What brings you here? In Bielaveja, I mean." "I came to see the forest, and to protect it." They sounded deadly serious. "Me and my friends heard about what's happening here, and we decided to come and help." The men on the bench were looking at us grimly. "Hey," someone said suddenly from behind our backs. Kim smiled, the man on the bench stiffened. I turned around. The woman approaching us had the longest, thickest braids I'd ever seen, as thick as my arm. There was something faintly Asian about her facial features, and the men on the bench looked at her with deference. "You should stop drinking that moonshine. It makes you pick fights you can't win," she said. She looked ferocious. Well, barring the fact that she also looks like a character from Ao Oni. She looked ferocious, and the drunks started explaining themselves. "But look at this, Elzunia," said one of them, gesturing towards us. "For the last fucking time, the name's Lisa." She pronounced it Lisa. "And this is my friend. You are to leave them alone, got it?" Her Polish sounded weird, more melodic, or maybe mellower, even when she cursed. The drunkard mumbled and went back to drinking. "Thanks, Lisa," Kim said in English. "You shouldn't have." "Oh, but I wanted to." How did she command so much respect? "Why did they listen to you?" I asked. She turned to me and shrugged with just a hint of a smile. "Oh, they have their reasons." She looked me up and down. "And who would you be?" "This is Maya," smiled Kim. "She is also not from here." "Oh? Are you here to protest the logging?" She raised her eyebrows. "Or just a tourist?" Why were they logging in the national park? "Wait, isn't this place like a national park?" I asked. "Why are they logging here?" "You'd think they'd leave the oldest forest in the continent, the beating heart of it, alone, wouldn't you?" She looked at me with a grim expression. "There's illegal logging here," Anya chipped. "Wood is money, and there's plenty of wood in this forest." Suddenly a feeling rushed over me. I was burning. Well, now we are at high range. I couldn't see the forest from there, but suddenly I felt very aware of its presence. I also felt something else deep in my stomach spreading through my veins. Anger. Like a wave of heat coming from the heart of the dark, ancient forest. A word appeared in my mind. A strange one that was neither Polish nor English. Kalgira. Lisa looked at me in the eyes and spat on the ground. I'd eat those greedy bastards alive. I noticed Kim watching me. I felt like I was being watched, and when I looked up, I saw Kim observing me with a curious expression. They were hiding something. I looked at them and realized they were much more than they first seemed. Under their colorful attire lurked something else, something primal. Why are you looking at me like that? I know you have strange dreams, they whispered. I suspect the forest is reaching out to you. They leaned closer to me. It runs in your blood. The words were like a punch to the gut. Trust me, I know. And then we go to balanced again. Oh, that was actually a hit to willpower, excuse me. Who am I? I asked quietly. You can see the invisible, they said, looking me in the eyes. You'll find a way. Suddenly, I felt confident. Well, easy go, easy come. Hint, I met someone who knew about my dreams. I felt a sudden surge of confidence. I wasn't making it up. There was something strange in my family history, and there were people who knew what was going on. Before I could ask more, Anya and Bartek approached, and Kim shook their heads, silencing me. Meet us tomorrow at the login site. They blew me a kiss, put their arm around Lisa, and walked away. We decided to leave as well. Still afternoon? I kept looking over my shoulder, but no one was following us. Well, I guess we'll visit the graveyard right away then. So, we have quite a few churches here, Bartek explained as we walked down the road. 2 Orthodox, 1 Catholic, and even 1 Baptist church, he said as though it were something uncommon. Was there a synagogue? Oy vey. And a synagogue. I knew a part of my mom's family was Jewish. He shifted his weight uncomfortably. There aren't any Jews here anymore. Don't mention the war. Any Lutheran churches? Asked Tanya. I don't think so. Bartek shook his head as he led us to a small wooden church surrounded by a cemetery. Anyway, even though we have all these churches, there's only one cemetery. The church was Orthodox, but the graves were a mishmash of styles and faiths. Catholic, Orthodox, atheist, everyone resting together. The place reminded me of a forest. It's like in the forest, I said, looking at the spruces growing among the graves. It's full of death. What's fallen stays where it fell, and it's all kinds of trees, bushes, and animals, and life is growing out of it all. Bartek didn't look convinced. Yeah, maybe. He looked at the cemetery, and for a moment he seemed lost in thoughts. All of my family lies here. I mean, the ones that are dead. Hey, what do you think? What do you think happens when you die? I'd like to think that it's something fair. I like the idea of judgment, you know? Maybe you look at your life and finally know why you were doing the things you did and what came of it all. It would make sense. Bartek nodded. Yeah, it would. I like to believe it does. He looked over the cemetery fence. Well, anyway, we can go see something else if you'd like. Well, anyway, this is it. The spiritual heart of Bieloveja. We can go see something else if you'd like. So that's where we stood. I wanted to go in, and he was clearly scared to let me enter the cemetery. Well, got a roar. What was he playing at? What the fuck, dude? We're here to find my ancestors, I growled at him. Maya, behave. Anya was clearly not amused. Bartek shifted uncomfortably. I don't know if that's a good idea. Once again, hiding something. You found it. My family's grave. Maybe. So what are we waiting for? He mumbled something and led us through the labyrinth of graves to the far end of the cemetery. We walked through the narrow walkways between the graves. Bartek's pace was painfully slow, but I had no choice but to follow him. gritting my teeth and cursing under my breath as he stopped every few steps and looked around. At one point, he threw me a condemning look. "We're in a graveyard, Maya. Have some respect, will you?" Before I had a chance to answer, we saw a woman. Tall, broad-shouldered, and long-legged. She must have been in her late 40s or early 50s. She was marching through the walkways with fury in her eyes. Bartek quickly stepped between the graves to get out of her way. Well, gotta be centered on our objective. I walked on, ignoring her. I just kept going. She just kept going, and inevitably, we bumped into each other. "Hey, watch your fucking step," she growled. I snapped back. "Fuck off, you watch your fucking step." She snorted and weighed me up. Kids. Well, at least you're able to speak up for yourself. Good first impressions overall. We started talking. We chatted for a while and I decided to ask her for directions. "Actually, I'm looking for an old grave. My family lived here and... what's the name?" "Borodich," I answered with a perfect Polish accent. "Young Borodichovna." She used an antiquated feminine form of the name. She shook her head. "I'm just coming back from there. Go to the end of here, turn left, and go to the far corner of the wall." She looked at me in a funny way. Gotta be cautious as well. "Oh, thank you." Bartek didn't seem to know the way. I think it was only then that she noticed him. "Oh, it's you," she said with a barely hidden disdain. "Well, I better be going. See you around, I guess." With that, she left, followed by Bartek's hostile gaze. So who was that, anyway? "Who was that?" I asked, watching the woman leave. Bartek winced. "Oh, that's Olga. She's a local activist. She left Bielovesia when she was 18 or something and returned a few years back on the notion that she was going to change this place." We continued to the far corner of the cemetery. There, seemingly forgotten and covered in moss, was a lonely grave. It was damaged. The tombstone was broken, deliberately. Someone had obviously smashed it with a hammer. The name was half erased. The plaque was also damaged. Someone had tried to scratch out the name, but the letters were still visible. There was a circle in coarse salt around the grave. Achievement unlocked. Rest in peace. You found an important grave. "I'm sorry," Bartek sighed. "I didn't want you to see that." Let's be reasonable. "Who did this?" I asked, gritting my teeth. I don't know." Anya squatted and looked at the plaque. "I can't read it. The letters are all wrong." "Is it Russian?" "Belarusian. The same letters, different language," he explained. "There were a lot of them before the war." "I told you, man, don't mention the war." I looked at Bartek, hoping for some context. Bartek put his hands in his pockets. "So, you didn't know anything about your dad's side of the family?" he asked me cautiously. "Whatever happened at least 70 years ago, and someone still remembers." He had a point. "I don't know them. My mom left my dad when I was just a kid, so I don't remember much," I admitted. "And she kept me away from them. She doesn't even know I'm here." I didn't tell her that I was visiting Bielovesia. "Also, hello there, Queen Electra. Stay around, enjoy the show. Things are just unraveling." "Maybe he was abusive," said Anya carefully. "You have those violent outbursts." "Yeah, I guess." I looked at the grave for the last time. My family's name looked strange written in the unfamiliar Belarusian letters. As we were leaving, I was thinking. I was on to something. Hint updated. Family grave had been vandalized. We're now at high willpower. Pretty nice. There was something unnatural about my family, and me coming to Bielovesia had stirred some old demons. I just had to find out what my ancestors were doing there, who they were. Ah, just as I thought then. With that though, I left the cemetery. Final destination. Abandoned railway. Bartek wants to show us the more picturesque spot in the area, said Anya. Maybe that's not the right word, he said, frowning. Well, it's not like it's that beautiful, but it has, you know, an atmosphere, a climate. Sick to death of these scammers. Well, what happens, happens. I'll say this much. Ambience? Anya said it the same moment as I, and we laughed. Ambience, Bartek said, and Bartek smiled, visibly relieved. I meant ambience. We ended up on some abandoned tracks. We soon left the village behind and ended up on some abandoned railway tracks. The perfect place to meet a serial killer, I grumbled, looking at the overgrown tracks disappearing among the trees. But with a slow, winding river a stone's throw away and the long, drooping branches of the old trees shading the unused railway, that place really was picturesque. The bees buzzed around us, the birds sang like there was no tomorrow, and the fragrance of herbs hung thick in the air. My head was spinning. I was bursting with energy. Oh, we're now a little bit more brave. Let's race to the trees, I shouted, and they could react, and before they could react, I was already running. It was an easy win. Oh, they didn't like it. I started with a jog and gradually sped up, but they were never caught up with me. It was only when the shadow of the trees engulfed me that I stopped and looked back. Bartek and Anya were way behind, walking at a leisurely pace, talking and laughing. Jerks. I heard a noise and turned around. A woman was standing among the trees. It was Lisa. How did she get there? How did you get here so fast? I couldn't help but ask. There are shortcuts, she didn't elaborate. She smiled. Since we're alone, I have some advice for you. She looked the way I'd come from. Don't get too attached to your friends there. It won't last. I didn't know what to say, so we just stood there looking at one another. Yeah, Maya, don't get attached to those normies, because you're about to become a werewolf and be with the cool kids. Do you mind if I join you? She asked when Bartek and Anya approached. I noticed Bartek getting tense. So what's the story with you two? I asked Bartek. She is from around here. He shook his head. But she helps with the protests. You know, Lisa turned to me. The protests against the logging that his father so eagerly promotes. Bartek winced. And snapped, I guess. Sorry, shouldn't we coexist with the forest? That means taking what we need to survive, just as everything does. 6,000 trucks of wood isn't taking what you need, kid. He threw me a glance, looking for help. Well now. Do we side with Lisa? Or do we side with Bartek? Tough questions all around. "6,000 trucks of wood. We give a little, and we take a little. But 6,000 trucks of wood isn't a little. So, she had a point. Don't look at me, Bartek. I think it's barbaric. I wasn't about to beat around the bush. If it was about local action, there wouldn't be a problem, Anya chimed in. But it isn't. Giant corporations are at work here with heavy machinery. Ask your friend about his father's money and his clients, Lisa shrugged. Bartek stormed away. I shrugged and followed him. Lisa followed me. We walked the narrow path. The path was too narrow for all of us to walk together, so at some point I found myself walking with Lisa. She would squat from time to time and collect some herbs. "So, you're looking for your roots," she said after a while. "Why?" "There's a story here and I need to hear it," I answered honestly. "Sit down with me." She nestled among the roots of an old tree, reached into her basket, and took out a blunt. "Of course." "Let's have a smoke and I'll tell you a story." She noticed when I hesitated. "You need to hear it." First day, and we're already smoking. But not yet. Well, just sit down first. Lisa let out a cloud of smoke and started talking. "From what I learned from Bartek's grandma, you're asking the wrong questions about the wrong people." Her voice was so soothing. I closed my eyes and just went with the story. "This is a tainted land, girl," she continued. "So much blood was spilled that Pusha almost lost her mind." Pusha? Pusha was one of the words for forest. Polish had lots of those, but she used it in a weird way. "Why do you call the forest Pusha? Isn't last the right word?" "I call her Pusha because it's the proper name," she huffed. "Las is to Pusha what dog is to a wolf. Domesticated, enslaved, used. Pusha is the primeval forest, one untouched by humans, primal, strong, and feared." There was admiration in her voice, and I realized that the words sounded like the rustle of leaves, like the wind. Pusha. As I was telling you, Pusha almost went mad, and it's not wise to wake those spirits, especially not now. "You mean the dead?" I asked. She looked at me with those uncanny eyes. Her gaze was almost unbearable, hard, with anger smoldering somewhere deep within it, ready to jump at my throat. And then suddenly, something changed. Lisa sighed heavily. "You have no idea, do you?" "About the past?" "No, all I know is that my grandfather was born here and that his aunt was a healer and an herbalist." Her eyes lost focus as though she was looking at something only she could see. "In 1939, when the war broke out, first came the Germans and then the Russians. You know, they actually worked together. Stalin never forgot that he was beaten by the Poles back in 1920. Which is fair. I didn't really care, but I nodded politely. "You should." "Oh, you have no idea what I'm talking about." "It doesn't matter, really." She took a drag. "Anyway, many millions of lives later, Stalin and Hitler stopped sleeping together, so to speak, and the Germans came. And then the Russians again. And then there were the forest soldiers." The forest part got my attention. I nodded so she would continue. The forest part got my attention. "They started as Polish soldiers, but then the war ended and they became guerrillas to fight the Russian occupation, and then they ended up as desperate bandits. For the people who lived here, they were all the same. Germans, Russians, forest soldiers. They killed, they maimed, they tortured and burned villages. It didn't matter what language they spoke." "I'm sorry. I didn't know that it was all so tangled. My great-grandparents were from here. After the war, there were some changes and my whole family was sent to Siberia to die. My grandmother was the only one who survived. She met a Buryat shaman. And here I am." "But your story is tangled with all of this." She looked straight at me. "Have you ever wondered what your grandfather did during the war?" I wanted to answer, but suddenly I felt dizzy. The smoke from her joint smelled funny. Of forest moss, strange herbs, and blood. Try to stay focused. I focused and understood that the strange feeling came from within. It was like a long-forgotten dream, like an ancient memory suddenly brought to life. I let it in. We are sitting around the fire, deep in the pusha, though others are sleeping. I listen to the whisper of the leaves. The forest is speaking to me, demanding action. It wants me to be its revenge. I understand what has to be done, and I can't wait to be the forest's revenge. I wake the others and tell them the plan. Tomorrow, we're going to burn a village. I sit by the fire and listen to wolves howling to the moon, weeping for their slain brothers and sisters. Then, the vision ends. When I came to my senses, Lisa was still looking at me. If I understood what you were saying, something from my family's past casts a shadow on my future. She shrugged. I've told you everything I know. If you want more, talk to my girlfriend. We'll be at the logging site tomorrow. Yeah, good idea. My grandfather was a forest soldier. I will. Now I finally knew who and what to ask. There you are, Bartek waved to me. I thought I'd lost you. I said my goodbyes to Lisa and we went back. The bison statues were watching me with their creepy pained eyes, as though they knew me. We called it a day and went back. The B&B was quaint. I left Ani and Bartek outside. They looked like they needed some time alone to say their goodbyes. When I got out of the shower, Ani was back, smiling and a little flustered. What a day. So, what do you think? I made a quick mental inventory of everything that had happened that day. I remembered the scene at the shop. Remember the shop? The tension seemed almost unnatural. A few words more and it would be a regular fight. Maybe they just envied Kim's style. Anya tried to joke, but she seemed worried. What happened here? What happened here? The people are still vandalizing my family's grave. What did my grandfather do? Well, nothing good, that's for sure, she sighed. I remembered the burning village in my vision and decided not to argue. I can't believe they're logging here, I shook my head. Isn't the forest on a UNESCO list or something? Yeah, I know. I want to check out this protest people were talking about. Maybe we could go there tomorrow. Do we mention the spiritual connection we had? Then again, the less you know, the sounder the sleep. You know what? I'm seriously tired. Let's call it a day, shall we? Soon we were both in our beds, ready to sleep. I lay in my bed for some time, trying to make some sense out of everything that I'd learned and experienced that day. The gibbous moon was shining through the window. A gentle wind was blowing. When I closed my eyes, I could still see the weird vision I had that day. My roots were here. I could feel them, almost touch them, and they were reaching to me. I should go and see the logging protest. I felt that the answers I was looking for were within my reach. I just had to go and see the logging protest, meet the right people, and make them talk. After a long while, all these thoughts became blurry. They slowly started to turn into pictures, sounds, and colors. I drifted off. The shop in Bieloveja seems derelict in the night. The bench is empty and useless. The door is being eaten by rust. It spreads on the metal slowly but surely, like frost flowers, or like mold. The air is tense. The town waits. My senses are heightened. I see the moon cutting the sky in half. I am a cub. I am a wolf cub like the ones my grandfather told me about. I will grow and my fangs will become sharper. I will taste blood. I feel a pull and surrender to it. I run toward a clearing. There are piles of fresh corpses of people who died too young, skinned and mutilated. Their loved ones stand around them, grieving, unable to do anything, waiting. And suddenly, they're just trees and tree trunks. I look around. My nostrils flare. Who did it? Who murdered the trees? There's a stench in the air like meat rotting in acid, but somehow worse. I see the monstrous army. Their mandibles are whirling chainsaws. Their long metal arms are wrapped with black pipes, that look like glistening intestines. Their smell is vile. They wait, unmoving. I turn to the forest for answers. The dead don't hold answers, and neither do the machines. I walk between the trees, trying to hear their wisdom. They whisper to me, telling me to look at the sky. There, between the stars, two shapes circle each other. An old, sad wolf with gray hair and a white weasel. They keep their eyes on one another as they continue their dance. Suspicious, but not hostile. We need to fight the enemy. The awful rotting stench. I know that much. But how can we do that when we don't trust each other? They stop. They look at me and the clearing. I spill my blood and bless them with words that I do not recognize, but that I understand. They come down to me, and their voice is the voice of the Pusha. Welcome back. You've been away for too long a time. Really wish I had some kind of fancy voice filter for that one, but you'll just have to rely on my natural one for this. Chapter 2, Logging. The next morning was full of sunshine and birdsong. I could smell the heat of the afternoon building. Those long, honey-like hours in late June when the earth just isn't tired of its own warmth yet. But it was crisp and pleasant now. I sat on my bed for a moment, letting my feet dangle from it. I wasn't sure how I felt. The weight of the previous day had coiled up somewhere in my chest and it felt like a tiny merry-go-round gaining speed. Then I remembered the dream, the clearing, the animals in the night sky, waiting for me. I took a shower, ate something without really paying attention, and went out. Anya joined you. We were halfway through the forest when I realized we were walking towards the logging site. Off we go then. Protests, activists. Answers? If you hear something, then it's just a raid alarm going off. You thought they would have taken the hint after this last night's downing. And yet... I was running at all the options over and over in my head and didn't really care where I was going. When I looked up, the sun was shining, the village was far behind me, and I was at the logging site. Anya looked around. So what's the plan? There was someone I had to find to impress for answers. You know, when we'd met at the store, Kim had said that I should meet their friends here if I wanted to learn more. I looked around. On my right was the ancient forest. On my left was the freshly torn clearing. Ahead of me, ruining the view, were huge logging machines and a group of people arguing in their shadow. I thought the machines were sucking the life out of the air. They were like a wound, not just pieces of equipment. Hope everything's okay. It is, so far. There were people there too. The loggers were sitting idly on the trunks, sharing cigarettes. The police that stood between them and a colorful group of protesters were visibly uneasy and twitchy. I saw some reporters who were clearly bored because no one was doing anything interesting. The harvesters loomed over the clearing, reeking. Kim was standing next to a vaguely military-looking man who was arguing with Olga from the cemetery. The protesters were clearly conflicted. I wanted to know what it was all about. Curious about the reason for it all, I approached the protesters. One of the police officers, young and nervous, said something I didn't fully understand. I let Anya handle it. Anya flashed her best smile and flooded him with Norwegian. He smiled back. Oh, you're one of them! And then let us go. Then I noticed someone joined us. And then I noticed that someone used the commotion to sneak with us past the police. A girl with disheveled, bleached-out hair. Don't worry, she patted the officer on the arm. It was an awful pickup line anyway. He recoiled. You shouldn't touch me, ma'am. I smiled at her and wanted to say something, but I was interrupted. Pat! Some guy called her from the gathering. Could you come here? I need you to show Olga that chart. She sighed, reaching into her backpack and taking out a tablet. And they're at it again. She murmured under her breath and winked at me. Coming! As I walked towards Kim, I heard more and more of the argument. Olga, you can't... The man was speaking with a strong German accent. Pat stood next to him with her tablet. She looked a bit amused. Do not fucking tell me what I can or can't do, Cornell, Olga interrupted. I can because they're destroying our mother. I can fight with all the means at my disposal, even if that means burning those harvesters to the ground. A slender, green-eyed man was standing near her. He took a few steps back, went towards one of the harvesters, turned his back on us all, and pissed on the machine. Olga smirked. Aw, Danielle, you know how to bring the point home. He looked at her confused. Burn the harvesters? Cornell asked calmly. In this drought? Olga, are you out of your mind? You know what I mean. We fight them any way we can because this is a fucking war, she spat. You've never seen real war and it shows. Nobody is shooting at us and believe me, we want it to stay that way. We need a peaceful protest. Hey, can we talk? I asked, approaching him. Oh, Maya, darling, it's good to see you. They smiled. Maybe you'll be able to convince her. Oh, so I was to make a stand, huh? I looked at them both. Olga with her fury and passion, Cornell with his cool professional demeanor, and shared without any reservations what I felt about the situation. Olga cautious, Cornell unfriendly, Lisa cautious, Daniel cautious, Kim sympathetic. Alright then. There's a fine line to tread, I said in the silence. You don't want the protesters to be painted as terrorists, and you don't want them to be treated as irrelevant and ignored. Kim shook their head and moved forward. Olga, darling, you know I love you, but Cornell really knows what he's doing. Please trust me on that one. They looked at her apologetically. Fuck off, Kim. You didn't even trust me enough to come here on your own when I asked you to. Lisa looked them straight in the eye. She had a peculiar accent. Kim, you want to teach me about violence. She looked them straight in the eye. About fighting oppression. Just because your boss went to, what, one mission in Afghanistan? Her Polish was peculiar, kind of mellow. Cornell winced. Lisa, leave Kim alone. He didn't know what to say, and it seemed like that the whole discussion would be derailed. No. Let's keep it going. See what happens. How are we, by the way? Analytical 5 out of 10, spiritual 5 out of 10. We're still not there in terms of inspiration, but hey. Let's make our best impression. Olga and neutral, Cornell cautious. Hey guys, the forest, the logging, the protest. Olga unclenched her fists. Cornell looked back at her and chuckled softly. You almost punched me. The conversation was over, at least for the time being. Cornell, together with his cronies, walked toward the reporters while Olga went back to the group of people standing in the shadow of an old oak tree. I looked at the pusher. The clearing full of fell trees was like a gaping, bleeding wound in the chest of a friend. I looked at my friend. We have to stop this logging. Yes, just like Olga said. Anya nodded excited. What they're doing is unforgivable, and we have to fight. The harvesters were dripping with black oil, and the forest stood tall, serene, and full of golden light. It looked like it could protect itself. And then I looked at the felled trees, dead, limp, helpless. Now, here is a good choice. Do we go with Olga and escalation, or do we go with Cornell and perhaps look for answers first? All good questions. Or rather, all good choices. And honestly, some viewer participation would not hurt, perhaps. Decisions. But let's look at our chart once again. Find a way to stop the logging, pursue to regain willpower. Cornell is cautious around us, as is Bartek and Danielle, but hey, maybe we can change that. As I approached the group, Kim waved at me. Come here. They took me straight to the leader of their group, the man who was arguing with Olga. Hello, Maya. I see you haven't come alone. He reached out his hand. His handshake was firm and strong. His eyes were an uncanny shade of gray. He might have been in his early 30s, I thought. Damn, he looked tough. Damn, you look like a tough guy, I blurted out, impressed. He was, in that bad boy hipster military way. What does it mean? What does it mean, Maya? What does it mean? I know, he said without skipping a beat. Cornell looked me in the eyes. I know why you came to Bieloveja. The forest is reaching out to you because for a long time your ancestors were its servants. And now you're the only one left to pay what they owed. He seemed to believe it. Hint, my family left unpaid debts to the forest. I looked at him skeptical, but he seemed to believe it. The important question is, he looked at me intensely. Do you want to help? I had no time to answer. But before I could answer, I heard a commotion and turned around. The reporters were coming our way, but their cameras were switched off and pointed at the ground. Why weren't they filming? Funny, I thought. They should be taking photos of or filming a protest, but I couldn't remember if they were and when I arrived at the site. So? Asked Cornell. There was a hint of impatience on his voice. The reporter shook his head and grimaced. Sorry, everyone, we can't do anything. We're not allowed to cover what's going on here. Suddenly, I understood. Then it hit me. The police weren't there to protect the protesters or the press. Yeah, it must be hard to do your job when the police is watching your every step, I said, and they nodded. There was a moment of tense silence. Suddenly I understood the dream. That was the moment I was destined to intervene. Okay, let's see. We could still use the reporters. Cunning. Not going with that one. I just had to make the reporters understand. Either analytical or spiritual. We can do either. The protest was too quiet. They needed inspiration. 3 out of 10. No. We'll go with the middle option then. No way, I said, shaking my head. No fucking way. I couldn't quite place the look on Cornell's face. Was it interest? He seemed interested in me, like I was a new toy. Well, this is the reality here, he said finally. The media will cover anything that is violent and then present it as all as eco-terrorists who should be locked up in prison. So we needed to prove that we're not terrorists. I looked at the reporters. They were a bored bunch from competing media outlets thrown together by circumstance. I needed to convince them we weren't terrorists. I laid down the arguments. The loggers came here to kill the forest, I said, and for a moment I was surprised by how clear my voice was. They don't respect the land, they came here to destroy and we came here to protect. It's a story as old as time, good versus evil. Cover it and people will watch. It had an effect, just not the one I had hoped for. And that was exactly the New Age bullshit I was hoping for. I turned and saw a journalist lowering their camera. There was a sticker on it with the logo of the national TV station. Now let's throw in a few shots of that freak, he pointed to Kim. Why are deviants destroying the traditional way of life of the Polish countryside? The reporter started saying into his microphone. Well, time to get angry. How about we smash his camera? Actually, no, let's work together. What's up with you? I asked the other reporters. Have you lost your spark? Have you forgotten why you do this job? But they just ignored me and turned their attention to Olga's group, who chose that moment to violently clash with the cops. Achievement unlocked, TV star. You appeared on TV. I felt someone touching my arm. This is the moment where you exit the scene. Kim turned me around and gently but firmly pushed me away. We'll be in touch, they whispered. Yep, hi Mom. When I was on the road to the village and nobody could see me, I stopped and screamed. A startled flock of birds took off from the trees nearby and filled the air with feathers and movement. In the whole commotion, I lost Anya from my sight. I was alone. Hey, let me help you, a voice behind me said, and I jumped. A woman was looking at me with concern. What happened? I was fine. I'm fine, I croaked. My throat hurt. She rummaged in her backpack. Here, I have water if you need some. We walked slowly toward the village. I learned that she was an independent German reporter who'd come here about a month ago. Her name was Erika. So, why are you protesting the logging? She asked after a few minutes of small talk. I haven't been here for long, I answered angrily, but I've already learned that Poland is ruled by a right-wing party who are total climate catastrophe denialists. I feel Polish and I have all the right to protest. Oh no. Womansplaining. I looked at her. And why are you asking? Do you know why we are cutting down the forest? Why they are cutting down the forest? Rather the trees, she asked back. Because you do know that logging is done by a government company, the state forests. Why? But why are they doing this? I wasn't sure if I understood. Shouldn't the state forests take care that the forest was healthy? It all started with spruce bark beetles. Erica looked into her notes and started explaining the whole situation. That year, the beetles' infestation was of catastrophic proportions, and the foresters decided that the only way to stop it and save the rest of the forest was to cut down as many infested trees as fast as possible. But is the logging legal? I wanted to know. Opinions differ, but such massive logging in a UNESCO-listed area might be illegal. Maybe if they remove the dead trees, the infestation wouldn't spread. They might do that, but dead trees are what make the forest unique. There are 20 times more species living on a dead spruce tree than on an alive one. Okay, but is cutting down trees the only way to stop the infestation? The foresters state that this is the only way, she said. Some biologists argue that they are cutting wrong trees and doing it too late to change anything. Couldn't they just leave the bush alone and let nature take its course? That's one of the options. But there is a drought, and no one is sure if the forest would survive on its own. It was infuriating. Why couldn't she just answer my question? Alright, calm down, calm down. Let's try to understand her point of view. I see that you're trying to show me the whole picture, and I appreciate it. I just hope there would be an easy answer. I'm just doing my job, Erica shrugged. I describe all aspects of the situation to you, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do. I shook my head. Why did the situation always have to be so complex? At least I was sure that they were cutting down the trees and the bush needed my help. When they cut down the trees, what happens to the wood? The state forests have to be financially self-sufficient. They earn money by selling forest products, including wood. That's why I think the bark beetle is not the reason, but an excuse to push more wood on the market. I concluded my case. She looked skeptical. You're not the only one feeling helpless, she sighed. But anger makes you see things in black and white. And the truth is always more nuanced than that. I grew to despise this phrase, so what was right and what was wrong then? Answer me. So what should I do when I feel that something is wrong? Do you believe that people can be evil? She asked back. Yes, people can do bad things for sure. Some people do really shitty things. But is it just their actions or their nature? I said nothing. What's the matter? Well, time to let it out. I'm so fucking angry at what I saw. I took a deep breath. Then I remembered what Cornell had said. All that mystical stuff. And they said that I have some family debts to pay. I shook my head. It's a lot to take in, and there was that foul smell back there. She looked at me with a weird expression. What smell? The smell was not the point. Of all the things I told you, you asked about a smell. I'm trying to understand what is going on here. I think I know what's going on, but I don't think that I should be the one explaining it to you. I looked at her and raised my eyebrow questioningly. I thought she'd been hurt by my outburst. You'll learn in your own time if you stay here long enough, she said, clearly wanting to drop the topic. Fine, let's calm down a little bit. I shrugged. Cryptic remarks never did anything for me. The situation was complicated enough as it was. I just hoped I hadn't made things worse. Well, we went from friendly back to sympathetic, so back to square one, I suppose. Anya came back soon after me. I lost sight of you, she said apologetically. I'm glad you made it back in one piece. So, how was your day? I learned a lot. Did you know that the government supported the logging even though it was illegal? Anya just nodded solemnly. Yeah, I've read about it. Why didn't you tell me? Well, you have a lot going on. And that is the answer. I have a lot going on. This market practice is why I have a death grudge in IKEA. Oh, so they also have their own skeletons in closets. Self-assembled closets, even. I met a lot of new people. I met some very interesting people. Yeah, they look like a colorful bunch. Maybe you could introduce me later. They sure are passionate. They argue between themselves more than they argue with the loggers. I sort of gave an interview, but I'm afraid they'll manipulate the shit out of it. An interview? But you only just got here. It just sort of happened. Just another day in Bieloveja. We sat for a while in silence. You know, there is more to see here than Bieloveja, Anya said from her travel guide. Pogorelce, Budi, Tiremiski, Sherlonka, excuse me. Yeah. Pogorzelce, Budi, Teraveski, Sherlonka. There's something interesting in every village. An open-air museum, some kind of folk university, the bison. Maybe you'd like to see something more than the logging. Honestly, no surprise here. The founder of IKEA was also a fascist. It would be great if I could see everything, but I can't. I want to focus on the logging even if I am missing something else. And how's the search of your roots going? Anya couldn't stay silent for long. Let's open up a little bit. It seems that my ancestors lived around the forest for a long time, and there are some kind of debts to be paid. Wow, Honestly, I'm not sure what to think, but if you need something, just let me know. I also founded the Securitate before 89. Incredible. I just sat there looking through the window. The day they'd been full on, and I was exhausted. It's quiet now, yet I know deep down inside that something isn't right. I'm walking through the forest to the logging site. It's getting dark. The light seeps away as though there are millions of tiny punch holes in the sky through which it can escape, and then the darkness starts to pour in. And I see bodies strewn across the ground, bloodied, maimed, with their limbs torn from destroyed torsos. I can see some of them are still alive, still struggling for air, still trying to live. They are trees. Fallen trees. Still alive, still struggling for air. The monsters are coming. They have long skeletal arms. They are wrapped in glistening black intestines, and each arm has a wide gaping mandible full of whirring blades. They snap at me blindly. But I'm not alone. I feel righteous anger burning through me like molten lava bubbling from the ground, through my feet, up my legs, through my chest to my head. I point to the monsters. My friends watch, and I bask in their rage. I howl out the death sentence and we run toward the monstrous shapes. We bite off heads and tear off arms. We are an executioner's axe. Unflinching. Then I wake up. Find out what's happening to you. I guessed and I bolted upright. I was alone. The sun was setting and in the deep red light the room looked like it was bathed in blood. My pillow was on the ground and the duvet was torn. Tiny feathers were spilling through the tear. Through the tear. What happened? I know the answer. Do you know, kids? Find out soon in the next episode of Dragon Ball W. Chapter 3. Standoff. There was no way I was going back to sleep. Since I'd arrived in this accursed village, things had been getting more and more peculiar with every passing hour. The last dream freaked me out and I needed to find answers to all the questions buzzing in my head. I needed to talk it over with someone I trusted. Kim or Anya? Well, Anya is the normie, so Kim seemed okay. I thought about Kim. They had to have lots of experience and they seemed to accept all the strange shit that life throws at us. We'd definitely hit it off as well. The sun had just set, and the moon wasn't up yet. The forest loomed on the horizon. The activist camp was somewhere there. I soon ran into Anya. Oh, Maya, good to see you. We need to talk. I'm worried about you. Since we got here, you've looked distressed. I've asked around and it seems you're associating with some dangerous people. They know things about my family, and I need that information. To be honest, I could really use some support. Would you come with me? Anya is loyal. That's nice. Sure, sister. And we walked together. The camp had a different vibe than the logging site protest. There were more people there. We looked around, trying to take it all in. They're coming and coming, Anya laughed, excited. The people at the camp seemed quite cheerful. The smells were intriguing. There were tents and I could smell some bacon in the air. People were milling about, setting up camp, singing, preparing posters. It was a joint effort. More rage. My stomach growled. I was hungry. I looked around. I definitely needed to talk to someone about what was going on, about what I felt. Hello, I said as I approached. Cornell eyed me warily. Hello. What brings you here? I shrugged and dug my hands deeper into the pockets of my jeans. I have so many questions about myself, the forest, and the logging. Cornell looked at me with those uncanny gray eyes. I could feel his attention lock on me. It's okay. Join us and you'll understand. We're here to stop what's happening, to show that we don't agree and that we hope to make a difference. Will it work? I don't know. All I know is that it worked before. It worked for Gandhi, it worked with segregation and apartheid in the end, it worked with communism, so let's see if it works with capitalism as well. Violence is not an option here. And I think you know quite well that anger doesn't really get shit done. I smiled back. Somehow being around him made me feel more relaxed. I know, you can count on me. I had a family debt to pay and I couldn't be just an observer anymore. So, we may have a little citizen protest going on tonight, but I'll need your support if we want to convince the others. They all wanted to do something that night, but after a whole day's discussion they were still divided on what to do. 3 for one option, 3 for the other. I had the deciding vote. Yeah, things sound serious. Here it is. Cornell's plan. Peaceful protest. Olga's plan? Violence. Maybe even extreme violence. I'll let it mill in my head for a moment while I go get a drink. Of course, you would also be free to voice your opinion on the matter. But I'll be back in a moment. Alright then, let's see here. You're a man of peace. Only resort to unreasonable means when reason itself stops being an option. Then we're going with Cornell's plan. A peaceful protest. And now he is no longer cautious. He is neutral. Activist. You voted for the more peaceful plan. I voted for the peaceful protest. And soon we were on our way to the National Park headquarters and education center. We had some banners to install. Anya tagged along. This is so exciting, Anya whispered. I've never done anything so illegal. Goal: stop the logging peacefully. As we were on our way, I realized that we followed the path only because of my vote. I made a difference. The National Park headquarters were located in something called Palace Park. The name, like everything in Poland, was historical. Centuries ago, some king had his hunting lodge there, but now it was a mishmash of old and new buildings scattered around the park. Some were rough and bulky, made of stone and brick, while others were an extravaganza of wooden porches, lace-like shutters, and meticulously sculpted pillars. There was no one around, but the area was well lit. Let's look around. I looked around once more. The moon was hidden behind the clouds and I didn't see any stars in the sky. If you didn't count us, the park really seemed empty. Dead even. Suddenly I remembered the church located just next to the palace park gate. I could feel its dark silhouette looming in the darkness. Waiting. We were ready. They'd spent the whole day painting the sign on a length of material sewn together from what looked like old sheets that were various shades of grayish-white. The dark green letters declared, "Wood is the enemy of the forest." "Where do we hang it?" asked Danielle, who'd come equipped with climbing gear. "I think we should attach it to the drain pipes there and there." I pointed at two corners of the building and Danielle grunted in agreement. "It doesn't matter," Olga said, "because hanging the banner is a waste of time." She was clearly upset that we ditched her plan, but perhaps she had a point. No, keep on going." Olga looked at me as though she expected me to say something, but I didn't take the bait. "It's a great banner, and I'm sure it will look good on the pictures published by a number of independent political blogs." She looked at Cornell. "But it's stuck so deep into the overeducated ecological dispute that people won't get it, and the loggers won't care." Cornell just shook his head and gestured Danielle to continue. Ooh, we are getting very analytical. 8 out of 10. Soon the sign was up, screaming our message to all of Bieloveja. Cornell looked at me. "Maya, what do you think?" "Wood is the enemy of the forest." Logging wood. Enemy of the forest. Sure, let's be a little kiss-ass. I didn't really get that slogan, but I decided to play it cool. "Oh, it's glorious." "I'm glad you think so. I love the wording. Humans let the forest grow so they can make wood from it. But that isn't the purpose of the forest." Finally, we pulled the banner up. "It's an important message." Anya looked up with fire in her eyes. "The world must know." I looked at the sign flying high over the park. When we finished, Cornell gathered us together. Yeah, I was proud of what we'd accomplished. And I contributed to that. Whatever my family had done, I was starting to pay back the debt. Cornell reached for his bicycle. "Let's go for a trip, to remind ourselves what we're trying to protect." The woods were full of stars. We cycled in silence, enjoying the company of the forest as it enjoyed ours. At some point, a clearing opened up before us. It was surrounded by boulders placed in a circle. They looked relaxed. A soft breeze rustled in the trees, welcoming us. There was something eerie about the place. I cleared my mind and inhaled. When I took a breath, I felt a wave of strange energy filling my body, harmonious and bright. So, why were we there? "Why are we here?" I asked, looking at Cornell. He turned to me, but before he could answer, a loud sound tore through the silence. It was a gunshot. Anya gasped, looking around, wide-eyed and terrified. The others tensed up, but they didn't look concerned, just confused. "Who's there?" Cornell shouted. There was a rustle, and I saw a bunch of men in camo, each of them with a rifle, coming toward us between the trees. I watched their angry steps and listened to the murmured curses. Suddenly, I noticed Bartek was with them. He winced when he saw me. Their leader weighed us up for a moment and finally focused on Cornell. "This area is closed for the night," the huntsman said in Polish. There was contempt in his voice. "There is a hunt going on, and y'all are trespassing. We have police officers here, so I would go home if I were you, unless you want to get arrested." That was a pile of hot bullshit. The guy reeked of guilt. Let's be reasonable and de-escalate a little bit. 9 out of 10 analytics. I assessed the situation. There was still a chance we could talk our way out of it. Reasonably. I looked to the hunters. "Maybe we should all go home. Maybe we should all go home, I said in Polish. We're disturbing the forest. My voice was calm and steady. It made the huntsman pause. I turned to the hunters, calm and composed. I looked at Bartek, but he just turned his eyes away. You don't tell me what to do, girl. The huntsman barked, and I realized with a shock that he was Bartek's dad. You hippies go home now, or things will get nasty. Once. I'm not telling you what to do, I'm speaking to everyone here. He hesitated and then shrugged. This is our forest. We grew up with it, and we're not going anywhere. You're the ones who are strangers, so get the fuck out of here. That's bullshit. The forest belongs to no one. He won't listen, Olga said, cracking her knuckles. And then she launched at him. Well, that escalated quickly. Also, Bartek hates us now. A heartbeat later, a full-blown fight began. I looked at Olga's face twisted in anger, and I realized that there was no other way, no changing anyone's mind. Anya took a step toward the fight, then hesitated. She looked at me. Well, fuck it, we ball. The clearing shattered like a broken window into sharp pieces, its edges cut clean by the rays of a flashlight swirling in the darkness. One piece, a shout. Another, a silhouette leaping. A dodge, a grunt, a punch, a cry. Curses in 3 different languages. I danced between the pieces, balancing on the edges. I body slammed into one of the men and he stumbled. Action, reaction. I took a step back, getting ready for his reaction. When he jumped at me, I moved to the side and tripped him when he lost his balance. There was a loud thud as he fell to the ground. A flashlight shone his way. Anya screamed and grabbed my arm. I saw blood. Blood on his head, blood on the stone next to his head, blood on the ground, dark and fresh. Well, what can I say? He had it coming. It was a fight, and in a fight you sometimes get hurt. I turned away from the man to look for another target. Then I heard a shout. She killed him! One of the men shouted, the horror clear in his voice. He directed his flashlight at my face, blinding me. I covered my eyes because I couldn't see a thing, and quickly assessed the situation. A second later, I noticed a huge silhouette behind him. It looked at me and its eyes were glowing. Leave her alone! It growled, and I recognized the voice. Was it Cornell? It was Cornell. He was bulging, muscles growing bigger, bones getting longer. He let out a joyous roar, throwing his hands, now equipped with strong claws, in the air. He grabbed the man and slashed across his torso. What was happening? How could it be real? Why wasn't I scared? Something warm landed on my face. More blood. Howls, terrified screams. Anya looked at me, panicked. What do we do? The man screamed again and pointed a gun at Cornell. Well, someone's about to get hurt. I acted on instinct. I zeroed in on the man pointing at the gun and launched myself at him. A gunshot tore through the night. And then there was only pain. The pain was unbearable. Nothing in my life had prepared me for this. Blinded by the blood in my eyes, I tried to assess the damage. My shoulder and chest burned. The flesh felt wrong and slippery under my fumbling fingers. Blood was pumping out through the broken skin at an alarming rate. I realized it was too late. The forest caught my fall with a bed of moss and twigs. I stopped thrashing, and the cold numbness engulfed me. No! I tried to get up. I punched the earth, trying to get some feeling in my hands. I gritted my teeth and tried to get up. I collapsed again. I felt so cold. Suddenly, there was light. I looked up. The full moon. It looked different, as you can see here. Your willpower dropped to 0. When you lose all your health or willpower, you become impaired. This will make physical tasks, if you have 0 health, or social and mental tasks, if you have 0 willpower, harder and sometimes impossible. The moon was a goddess, and she noticed me. "Get up," she said. I get up. I get up. I feel good. I know that I shouldn't, but I don't remember why. I don't care. I stretch. My muscles are sore and cramped, so I stretch like I've never stretched before. My arms are longer, my legs are stronger, my heart is pumping, and I feel like I've spent my whole life packed into a box and I've finally been set free. My mind is clearer than it's ever been before. I see the world in a sharp contrasts of black and white, movement and stillness. I smell prey. I hear language in the hooting of owls, the whistling of the wind, and the snarling of wolves. I am what I was born to be. I breathe. I take a breath and feel my ribs and muscles move. The forest smells of blood and fear and excitement. I'm happy. I laugh happily and others' laughter joins me. We laugh and sing to the moon. Something stings me. There's a small, malformed creature pointing a stick at me. The stick blazes with fire and there's another sting. The creature is no threat to me, but its presence is annoying. Its smell almost sends me reeling, and I don't like being pricked. Fuck out of here. I push the creature away and it flies through the air making funny noises. Then it hits a tree and stays there, pinned to a branch like a butterfly. My ears prick and I hear more creatures running blindly through the bushes. I feel better. My leg no longer stings and I feel better than ever before. Maybe it's a dream, I think as I move silently through the undergrowth. The creatures are running away, their backs turned to me. A growl escapes from between my teeth and one of them turns my way. It challenges me. I roar. I roar and the creature falls down and curls into a ball. It smells of ammonia. Piercing light burns my eyes. I hear more creatures coming my way. They want to hurt me. I hide in the shadows and they are too slow, too dumb, too clueless to notice me. I strike them down one by one. Some manage to defend themselves briefly, but most of them don't see me coming. The wind brings a new smell. The air tastes of fur and musk and blood. Shapes move among the trees, but they are no creatures. They're people, like me. Suddenly, I'm surrounded by them. I think I know them. They seem familiar. It's like I met them in the past, but they were hidden. They close in on me. What do they want? I relax and wait for them, unflinching. They approach me and sniff the air. Their smells are overwhelmingly familiar. Once the people that had sounds attached to them. But now, I realize the sounds were not their true names. "Run with us," they say. I howl with joy. We howl with joy and everything that hears us trembles with fear. Then we run through the forest and through the night. I get lost in the moment and pay no attention to the others. I am alone in the heart of the forest. I look up and see no moon, only clouds and tangled branches. Something changes. Something changed, and I realized how tired I was. I stumbled. Darkness. The night sky was full of stars. Confused, I opened my eyes. The forest around me was thick and dark. The tree trunks, wrapped tightly in dark-leaved ivy, were covered in ripples of lichen where the vines hadn't taken hold. The thorny, leafless bushes at their base were overrun with nettles. The fungi radiated with a ghoulish, sickly green light. Dark, sponge-like mushrooms clung to the fallen trees. Something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I looked down and saw my hands covered in a dark substance. I was naked. A sickly, glistening film of liquid was clinging to my skin. I could feel it on my face, in my hair. Blood. Whose blood was this? Had I killed someone? I remembered my dream and slowly lifted my eyes. There was a severed head right in front of me. The face was contorted, the eyes bulging, the mouth open, the tongue stuck out. It was obscene. I doubled over, retching. I recognized that face. Bad company. You killed Bartek. It was Bartek, his face splattered with dried blood. There was so much of it I couldn't see his freckles. The head watched me with reproach. No! I let out a long, blood-curdling scream. The night swallowed it. The bushes rustled, and a moment later I saw Cornell coming out from between the trees. He looked at me, at the head, at my face. He came closer and squatted beside me. This is what we were trying to tell you. His gray eyes smiled. See? You're a werewolf. I looked at him. I blinked. Everything faded to black. Let's see if we can squeeze out one more chapter before we can call it a night. Chapter 4. Lost in Woods. Breed hominid, auspice unknown, rank cub, tribe unknown. That's our new stat line. The morning you smelled of fur, earth, and the forest. Over the gentle snoring that filled the warm space under the low-hanging branches of an old spruce tree, I heard a squirrel. I was hungry. I went outside. Stepping over the sleeping forms, I made my way outside. Alone, hiding in the tall grass, I sniffed something. The sky was bright and the forest around me was dark and full of interesting smells. High in the trees, birds yelled about status, sex, and violence. Something opened in my mind and memories started flooding back. The fight, the gunshot, the strange dreams about being a werewolf. A creature stirred in bushes nearby. A tall, dark silhouette. A strangely familiar smell. I tensed up and watched the human as they looked around. "Maya, there you are," they said when they noticed me. It was time to get out of there. Suddenly, a feeling like cramp or a spasm surged through me and everything changed. I was Homid, the human form. My body started resetting itself to the familiar shape, and it hurt. Bones broke and fused again, muscles and sinews moved under my skin. I cried and thrashed. Then, panting and sweaty, I was Homid again. I hit the ground with my bare ass, colors exploded, the morning breeze suddenly became cold, and I shivered. Quick note, Homid. A Garu of human ancestry. Also the human form of the Garu. What is Garu? World of Darkness speak for werewolves. The more you know. Confused, I looked at the person approaching me. "You look cold." Cornell smirked and threw me a bundle of clothes. "You'd better not change for a while. They won't survive it. Not until you learn the right, at least." I snatched the bundle and started pulling the clothes on. Sneakers, loose-fitting jeans, a hoodie with a unicorn. They fit perfectly. I thought about the previous night when I was raging through the forest, about how differently I experienced the world through the wolf senses, and about the discomfort and confusion of changing shape. Goal, identity. Master the change. There was no denying it. I was no longer human. "There was a murder last night," I said anxiously. "What if they find my DNA at the crime scene?" "We'll take care of that. Human laws aren't as relevant for you anymore." We just stood there for a moment in silence. I was wondering how one usually learned they were a werewolf. "It doesn't make any sense," it suddenly struck me. "How come nobody knows werewolves exist?" "We protect the veil," was the answer. "It's easy to convince humans that supernatural doesn't exist. They already want to believe that. And the delirium helps. So, the veil is A poetic term for the false assumption that the supernatural does not exist, which the delirium reinforces. What is the delirium? The madness and memory loss suffered by humans who look upon a Garu in Krinos form. Krinos is of course also known as the war form. The one where you are a big scary biped that tears everything it looks at. That can tear up anything that looks at you funny. There we go. You mean delirium as in the medical condition? I asked, remembering something that I had read about acute confusional states. You'll have to ask Pat for that. But the gist of it is that humans are incapable of remembering that they saw a Krinos. He laughed. They panic, turn away, and instantly forget. Every time. And there it is, Krinos. The half-wolf, half-human war form of the Garu. Then I realized something. Important. At some point, the rest of the party had awoken and joined us. The clearing was full of wolves. Fuck. The wolves were closing in on me. I knew my next decision would have serious consequences. Denial, escape, or acceptance, cooperation. Well, it's not Harry Potter where you can just pretend that you're not a mage, so let's go with acceptance and cooperation. The headless body was heavy. They said that, as my first kill, it was my burden. It was my duty to take it to the barrows. I didn't kill him. But I didn't do it, I said, looking at the corpse. I'd never. You have to balance the death you cause with your achievements. Cornell looked me in the eyes. That is the path of the Garu. He accompanied me, carrying the severed head in a bag. The others stayed behind, covering the tracks. I didn't want to talk, or to think, for that matter. Not about the person I was carrying, or rather trying to carry. It was just a thing. I needed to transport it from point A to point B. That was it. I kept dragging the body, getting more tired and more sweaty with every step. Let's change to... We have 5 forms, actually, as you can see. Currently, we're in the Homid state. There's the Krinos war form. Ruthless killing machine, nothing subtle about it. In between Homid and Krinos, there is Glabro, strong enough to lift heavy things without breaking a sweat and intimidate. There's Lupus, wolf form, a majestic animal with all of its advantages and limitations. Looks great in camera. And between Krinos and Lupus, we got Hispo, a monstrous wolf, smart, fast, heavy, and absolutely scary. Let's go with Glabro. I was Glabro, the near-human form. The pain was stronger than I ever imagined. I felt my muscles spasm as they rearranged themselves. My jaw cracked and my mouth filled with blood. I clenched my fists and claws drove into my palms. I screamed. When I arose, panting and sweaty, I was more than human. I was Glabro, wolfish, strong, scary. It hurt. Find your place among the Garu. The change hurt more than I expected. The world shifted. Not much, but enough. I felt my teeth get sharper and muscles stronger. I picked up the body. It was a lot lighter. At some point, I realized we weren't alone. There were 2 shapes in the bushes on either side of the road. Animals. One big and gray, the other small, nimble, and white. Ah, my companion smiled. I see you've noticed our patrons. Patrons? Sorry, what now? Patrons? Yes, the spirits who help us fight our war. Winter Weasel and Morning Wolf. The 2 animals stopped in front of me in the middle of the path. We came here to teach the cup, said the wolf. She smelled of ash and tears. I couldn't believe what I saw. It made no sense. I felt as if my brain was short-circuiting trying to interpret signals not meant for human senses. Was it really a weasel? When I turned my eyes away from the weasel, it flickered, as if it was just a projection on a broken screen. One moment, an animal. A moment later, just an idea. When it talked, the air smelled of electric discharge, and I felt like the worlds displayed directly in my mind. But hallucinations or not, they just wouldn't leave me alone. The weasel circled me, and before I knew it, I could feel small claws on my leg, then on my back, and then on my arm. It smelled of musk and electricity. And then it bit my ear. I tried to shake it off. Get off me! I yelled, trying to knock the weasel off my arm. Ooh, a feisty one. I like it. Its electronic voice echoed in my head. Enough, the wolf growled. Or at least that was what my brain decided to hear. I felt the weasel draw its breath. In the beginning there was Gaia, aka Mother Earth, and she gave birth to a mighty breed of warriors, the weasel began. It sounded electronical, like a teenager reading a Wikipedia page or a voice chat. They were called Garu, that's werewolves and werewolfish, and their sole purpose was to protect Gaia. They failed, wailed the wolf. I looked to the weasel for advice. Why did they fail? I looked to the weasel for advice. When time began, Gaia released 3 primal forces upon the earth: the Weaver, the Wild, and the Worm. The weasel continued. The Wild was the untamed force of life and creation. The cold, ruthless Weaver gave structure to the world, and the Worm destroyed what needed to be destroyed, creating balance. So were werewolves creatures of the wild? I asked. An untamed force of life. They were Gaia's children, the wolf snarled, born to herd and contain humans. I can see that something went wrong, I smiled wryly. The Weaver grew too ambitious and snapped and trapped the Worm within its lifeless web, the weasel answered. Confined and denied, the Worm went slowly insane. Now Gaia is dying, choked by the Weaver and eaten alive by the Worm, wailed the wolf. And the Wild is not the one you should fight, she snarled. You were born to protect it. Then it turned and led the way. It didn't look much different than other parts of the forest, until you noticed the mounds, that is. There was something about the flattened hills that drew my full attention. I could remember. A memory stirred in my mind. No, it wasn't a memory. It was a feeling anchored in my chest, akin to the taste of ash in my mouth and the smell of smoke. Longing, sadness, resignation. How did that song go once again? I'm waking up to ash and dust. I scratch my ass and I slap my nuts. But there was more to it. A sense of sacredness. It filled me with a calm excitement, and when I closed my eyes, I saw a fire burning in the darkness. Cornell kneeled near one of the mounds, put his hand on it, and whispered a few words. I saw the ground open slowly, like a mouth in the earth. I sighed. Let's do this. We put the body in the hole. We took the severed head and the body I'd wrapped up in sheets and put them in the hole. I worked slow. It closed slowly, and I could swear I heard the trees nearby sigh in anticipation. The wolf howled, and I could feel the hair on my hands rise. Welcome to your new life, the talking white weasel grinned. We have something else to show you. Go ahead, then. The only ash right now is all the tension. Not sure I follow you on that one. You're a cub, so you have special privileges, said the weasel. Usha will grant you a vision. You must see to understand, said the wolf. Think carefully before you choose what to see. Place of power. The future, your destiny. Ah. I burned it with a joke. Not the first time I ruined something. Wolf's Den. The present, the forest. Barrows. The past. Your family. Let's think. We still need to learn our family history, so I'd say we'll go for the past. It was hard to find the barrels, although I knew where they were. When I looked behind me, the path had disappeared. I felt the pusher playing with me, twisting paths, blocking my way with bushes and dead trees, and then suddenly opening a new path that was straight and full of sunshine. But I pushed on. Determined, I pushed on. Since the change, I had become acutely aware of how my body worked, and I remembered that humans were good at what they were good at. Running. Stubborn, relentless, long-distance running. Not as fast as a deer, not as nimble as a wolf, but steady and without rest. So I ran. And then I was there. The barrows. I climbed the nearest hill. When I was at the top, I stumbled on something. A shape in the grass. A skull watching me from its bleached eye sockets. There is a swirl. It starts deep within me and then it expands. Everything is in motion and there is no center anymore. I see a village. There is a village in the forest, and there is the howl of a wolf. People stop and look around, frightened. The howl is like a keen. The houses are mere huts. There's almost nothing that protects the people from the forest. Their clothes are rags, their feet are bare, their hair and long beards are unkempt. There are wolf cubs, then there is blood, then the howling begins. The mournful, blood-curdling keen of a mother who has lost her children. Watch, whispers the voice in my head. Watch and learn and remember. But I cannot just stand by and watch. I want to act. I weigh everything for and against the humans and I find them guilty. The forest wakes up, erupts with rage, and powerful, furred bodies surge through the trees toward the village. The humans try to escape. They scream and beg for mercy. They try to protect themselves with fire. The Garou rise up, their talons red with blood, their eyes glazed with fury, and the fire is yanked from the hands of the villagers. The houses start to burn. The keening turns into a howl of joy. My family burned villages for the Pusha for ages. The Garou have my eyes, my face. They are my family. I am the blood of their blood. I am part of the story from the very beginning. And I do it again. And then it happens again. The humans return. They rebuild the village, this time stronger and better protected. The keening begins once more. Then we, the Garou, come down on them like wolves on the fold. And again, new villages, new fires, more blood. But I don't want to do this anymore. I do not want to do this anymore, but the keening begins again. My heart fills with grief and rage and villages burn. Until one day there is only one Garou left in the family and he slays his own kindred in the fit of his first rage. He's young, but I recognize someone in him. An old man I know. He used to tell me stories about the forest before my mother took me away. I stay there and I watch, but I can't move. My throat burns, my stomach is in knots. I want to scream, but I have no mouth. I feel the fire. I smell the blood. I see the large ash-gray wolf looking straight at me. Her eyes are golden. She weeps. "It is in your blood," she says to me. "It is your duty. It is you. Come with me, child. Be my fangs and claws. There is no one else to be my cub. Come to me, child. I will nurse you and I will lick your wounds. We will kill together. We will feast and we will be merry. The forest will grow." I looked at her and perhaps for the first time, I saw her for who she was. Her pelt was marred with fire. Her eyes were smoking embers. Ash was falling from her heaving flanks. She looked old, ancient, seething with anger. She was the very idea of mourning made flesh, driven by a feeling of loss so profound that it burned everything in its wake. But she was more than that. She was also the spirit of the forest, the Pusha herself, wounded, hurt, violated, and mourning all her children that humans had killed. At least that was what I thought when I looked at her. The wolf mother looked back at me, and something in my eyes made me realize that she was helping my family for generations, and that my family used to serve her. "Join me," she pleaded. "Only you can understand me. Only you." She is asking nicely, however. Do we try and break the generational trauma? I think it's a generational trauma. But the forest needs us. But we tried to break the cycle recently. But you do not escape the cycles of guilt. I went to her, and she accepted me. And I accepted myself. My grandfather was serving the wolf mother. Goal? Stop the logging at any cost. And I finally understood who I was. Darkness fell again, and the bloody tide was loosed upon the world. Darkness. A lone howl pierced the silence like a single ray of moonlight in the darkness. Then there was another one, and then another, and then another. A choir of voices, triumphant and joyful. When I opened my eyes, I was in a clearing. Around me were the wolves. Huge, monstrous wolves, howling at the moon. I was Hispo, the monstrous wolf form. The pain was overwhelming. My spine cracked and twisted, my knees and ankles broke, and I fell on the ground. My jaw shattered and rearranged itself. My whole skin was on fire, rippling and sprouting fur. I howled in agony. When I rose, panting and spitting blood, I was Hispo, with strong paws, mighty jaws, and a mane of fur. More than a wolf, scary and monstrous. Instinctively, I changed and joined the choir. My voice was unsteady at first, but soon I found my own note, a unique addition to the chorus. "Well, hello there," Cornell smiled at me. "Welcome to the Sept." I realized that my survival depended on learning very quickly, so I just nodded and listened. "For a werewolf, the pack is family," Cornell explained, "and an alliance of packs united in a common goal is a sept." I realized that there must be at least 2 packs there. Let's see... Kim? An old grizzled wolf changed into Kim, and Cornell and Pat joined them moments later. "We are the Winter Weasel Pack." A white shadow settled on Pat's shoulder. I smelled musk and electricity. Modern smells. 3 of the monstrous wolves changed. Olga and Lisa stood up, human-looking again, their clothes rumpled. A yellow-eyed wolf by their side turned out to be Daniel. "We are the pack of the morning wolf mother," said Olga. "Now give me a moment." Been holding in a sneeze like you wouldn't believe. Right, where were we? They smelled of ash and tears, and for a moment I saw the wolf spirit among them. "We are all Gaia's soldiers," said Cornell, "in that we have no choice, but we can choose whom we fight alongside. If there is a war, who's winning?" "At the moment, the worm," Cornell said. The word reeked of decay and burning oil. "Mother Earth is sick, dying, and we are doing our best to protect her." "Do I have to choose a pack?" I asked, just to make sure. "No Garu can survive on their own," Cornell said with sympathy. "Your old human life is over, but we will never abandon you." I have so many questions. Why did I hear the moon whispering to me? "Luna gave us rage. That is why she's important," Olga said. "And that is why you'll never be able to touch silver again." "You are from all over Europe," I noticed. "Is this like our standard for a sept?" I didn't even know if that was a stupid question or a smart one. I looked at Cornell. "Is far from the standard, but desperate times make strange bedfellows," he smiled sadly. "Normally a sept is dominated by one tribe, maybe two." "There are at least a dozen tribes," Daniel interrupted. "And I hope, Maya, that you will choose yours wisely." "What about the spirits?" I asked. "How does that work?" "The world casts a shadow, and we call it the Umbra," said Lisa. "And in the shadow, every living creature, every emotion and idea, every important object exists as a spirit. That's all you need to know at the moment." "So if I got this all right, I've been conscripted into an ancient war against the worm," I said slowly, trying to put it all together. "And the moon gave me rage as a weapon, but I must avoid silver. And there's a whole secret world of spirits, and I have to join a pack and choose a tribe." "Exactly," Lisa nodded. "As for the tribe, there are two people who could mentor you now. Olga is from the Black Furies, an ancient tribe of women warriors. And Cornell is from the Children of Gaia, and he is more a peace and harmony guy." Now, if you give me a moment, I will put up a quick explanation as to who they are, courtesy of 1D4chan, because they are, as always, very on point in their descriptions. Never mind the fact that sometimes they can be a little bit, well, too on the nose, if you get my drift. So let's see here. And there it is. Werewolf the Apocalypse. There, tribes. So, Black Furies. A tribe of all women who give up most of their male Garu offspring for adoption, but retain male and female kinfolk and male metis. Think Amazon-style matriarchy, add in the proud warrior culture of the Greeks, and dash in some modern feminism for spice. Later writers who also threw in some neo-pagan stuff because they were white wolf writers, and of course they did. Very attuned to the workings of the wild over civilization, but the North American camp helped bring about Seneca Falls and get women the vote. Then plenty of them hang out in college campuses. Somewhat unfairly seen as big old bunch of butch lesbians, even in their own tribe book. Quote, "Shit, bitch, we're not all dykes." One of the few tribes to have actually seen a little social progress in the last few centuries. I mean, they don't even ritualistically sacrifice their male kids anymore. Mostly. But their primary weakness is still a tendency to go off half-cocked at men. The first in a long line of bad stereotypical ideas to be mostly fixed as the new additions and revisions rolled on. Their first draft were a bunch of violent, bitchy dykes on a sacred quest to castrate anything with testicles for the moon goddess. Hilariously, the time of judgment scenario where they fall to the worm can basically involve reverting to this initial characterization. What's time of judgment? I'll tell you later. And Children of Gaia. The only tribe to have been founded on an act of peace, and probably the biggest token good teammate of the Garu. Their goal is to unite the Garu nation and prevent infighting, something which is both incredibly logical, and given the oncoming end of the world and all, and damn near impossible given that practically all the other tribes are run by squabbling 5th graders with attention span of fruit flies and the memory of a goldfish for anything but the 1,000-year-old grudges they never forget or forgive. Though they do focus on peaceful resolution, they aren't all granola-munching peace and love hippies and weak fighters, as you've probably seen at the scene in the forest. Mechanically, their stats support them being one of the hardest non-warrior tribes to kill in Anhu's form, and we haven't covered that one, and they often act as bodyguards for great peacemakers like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela. Since they were one of the only tribes to not need lots of stupid stereotypical shit cleaned up for the first big revision, they naturally actually get worse in their revised tribe book, which I suggest, and the writers here, avoid like the plague. But first, let's ask the important question, what about my family's tribe? Hey, what about my family's tribe? Lisa winced. Daniel sighed. Olga shook her head. What's the matter? Your ancestors were the Get of Fenris, and no one here wants to have anything to do with that tribe, Cornell answered. They stand against everything we believe in. And here is their description. Essentially Germanic Viking werewolves. Abhor weakness and glorify martial prowess above all else. Think Korn Light and you're in the right ballpark. The Get used to be incredibly, openly bigoted against women, minorities, and their metis because they believed them to be weak and useless. But they mostly sorted that out after the bloody purge of that group of renegade Get that are literally Nazis. Their tribal symbol of the Get is rather reminiscent of the swastika, because hindsight is fun. And nowadays mostly stick to the kind of subtle, realistic, unconscious isms regular people deal with. Much as you'd expect most of the old bigoted attitudes were in earlier editions of White Wolf's books. The most notable of this was the narrator of the first tribe book, where he condemned the pro-Nazi Sword of Heimdall. Yet in the same book he calls the Uktena and Wendigo, other tribes, to be savages and essentially calls the Shadow Lords a bunch of backstabbing Jews. Revised edition works and forward into Werewolf 20 have not kept much of the attitude of bigotry and have downplayed the camps that are powerful proponents of it, such as the Swords of Heimdall. Because White Wolf isn't so dumb as to not eventually realize when they've been racist twits. Incidentally, that swastika on their logo, it did represent the superiority of one race over another, just in terms of wolf over man, rather than one kind of man over another. My grandfather didn't even know you, I was outraged. You can't judge me by his tribe's actions. You know that your family was burning villages for centuries, Lisa pointed out. Did you ever wonder why? Get of Fenris are the most radical Garu supremacists that ever marred the face of Earth, Kim scoffed. Like legit fascist werewolves. Some of them literally worked for Hitler. See what I mean? Thank you for telling me. I had the right to learn more about where I came from. For a moment, we were all silent. I needed to know more about the tribes. I wanted to learn more about the tribes to find an option that would really resonate with who I was. Kim, perhaps you can explain it to me? Kim told me a lot about bone gnawers, urban werewolves fighting for the disadvantaged and the marginalized, children of the rat. But what about you, Kim? It is always about prejudice, said Kim when I asked for their story. That was not what I asked. But to preempt that a little bit, bone gnawers, the forsaken and the downtrodden, homeless and destitute. This tribe fights the worm down in the alleys, gutters, and slums. Notable for being excellent spies and assassins within the cities. covers both extremes of impoverished urban dwellers, from the cool, wise, elderly homeless lady who dispenses sage advice to young runaways, to the crazy man living in a box who won't stop stabbing cats while screaming at passers-by about the mind control chemicals Pentex puts into their soda. And they're not limited to cities either, as many bone gnawers are also found among the poverty-stricken areas of the countryside, helping the rural poor. Survivors to the core, but contrary to the sneers of half their kinsmen, they have their own traditions of hospitality and egalitarianism that actually make them one of the most socially progressive tribes. After all, if the Geta Fenris have kicked you out for having internal genitalia, or the Black Furies for having external genitalia, or the Red Talons for not being as shithouse rat crazy as they are, well, there's always the Bone Gnawers. Rat gives everyone a second chance. Combined with their tribal traditions of pragmatism and down-to-earth, work on a problem in front of you and leave the big stuff to big people mindset, and they're honestly one of the smartest tribes in a setting. I asked about how you became a werewolf, I clarified. Patience, darling, Kim waved their finger at me. I've seen it all. You know, I was born the day when the Berlin Wall was constructed and half of my family was cut out. They looked somber. I ran away from home when I was 13 and hung out with some really weird crowd at the zoo station. I think I read that book. It was a memoir of a homeless teenager with a drug habit. I liked it there. There were animals and we lived like animals, but I liked it. Kim shrugged. You see, I always knew I was a werewolf. My family was full of them. I went through everything you could imagine. Punk rock, Berlin squats, drug dealing, gay clubs, you name it, I was there. I nodded and Kim continued their story. And there were always some sad prejudiced pricks. Prejudice is the worst shit. All those little constructs in their brains that poison everything they do. Did you really have a rat as the tribe patron? I asked. Sure we do. It's a very good patron, resilient. You want to be like a rat, always managing, always afloat. And this shit here, they gestured around, this shit comes from prejudice, and from exclusion, and from greed. Take greed and prejudice away and 90% of the world's problems are solved. Now tell it to the other Garu and they look down at you because you're a bone gnawer and they think they are superior. Prejudice. Prejudice everywhere. Pat was a glasswalker, and her tribe was finding its niche in cutting-edge technological cityscapes among the strands of the Weaver's net. It sounded intriguing. We talked for a while. And here comes that one explanation. Where the bone gnawers take the lower parts of cities, the glasswalkers take the high life. They have an affinity for technology and are the Garu nation's most prominent force in the business world. All the more Luddite factions think they're hopelessly corrupted by the Weaver, but the Time of Judgment scenario, where the Weaver takes center stage as the main villain, outright denies it. Quite apart from their being informed enough to be careful with that sort of thing, it'd be too obvious. The tribe's number one source of wolf gun fighters and warriors who travel to the spirit plane of the internet to punch out computer viruses and malware. Easily the most optimistic tribe, since they actually believe that time is making them stronger, and they've mostly purged all the crazy transhumanists and stereotypical gangsters. But their powerful humanity is also something of a weakness. For example, they treat their metis well, but they have too many of them because they make them very, very human romantic attachments to one another, and while their closeness to human society has ensured that they are really good with modern technology, they're also crippled outside cities, and their tribal weakness is an inability to regain gnosis in the wilderness. Also, later writers really bought into the whole modern civilization is evil biz a bit too much, and actively worked to make them less sympathetic and likable, introducing bizarre retcons like having them treat their kinfolk like shit for no reason. Thankfully, as of Werewolf 20, this trend seems to be on the decline. How did he get a spirit patron anyway? How did he get the winter weasel to be a patron? I caught it, said Pat. Or rather, I made sure it would have more to eat with me than alone. That's how you catch weasels. But is it a forest? But it is a forest spirit, isn't it? I think it's a weasel, so it gets accustomed to live where there is food, and right now it's in the city. It hunts electricity spirits these days, and feasts on them. So you're basically a city dweller. All glass walkers are. It's our natural habitat. I feel quite out of place in the forest. Why? The bush is our home. It may be your home, she said, and suddenly I realized we had less in common than I thought. I'm more of a city girl. We use the weaver to fight the worm, and the forest is not the weaver's domain. And I happen to be quite fond of humanity. They have great potential. I wouldn't take you for a werewolf, you know. Why? Because you look mostly harmless. I am, and I didn't expect to turn out a werewolf either. I was a student, happy with my tablet and coding, and then boom, I was a garu. How did you meet Cornell? I was in his first pack. We were both hanging out with the hacktivist crowd back then. When things went south and he disappeared, I found him. You said that things went south. What happened exactly? Our pack was decimated strictly because we were following Cornell's plan. And yet you are still following him. We've both learned a lot, and we have a good working relationship. You know, he is stunning. He makes a great impression, the 1st, the 5th, the 10th as well, but he's not a leader, if you know what I mean. I didn't know how to answer. Well, a true leader puts his pack first and himself second, and Cornell makes great first impressions. Ah. Finally, I stopped asking. I had to think over what I'd learned. I see. I see what you mean about Cornell. However, just for a treat, let's hear out Lisa, finally. I asked Lisa about her tribe, but she inherited her Sibarak legacy from her Buddha grandfather. She said I didn't know the proper legends, customs, and culture to join. So, Sibarak is a bit of a different beast. Well, literally, of course. Let me pull it up. Where is it? Was Sibarak a Russian word? So, Sibarak, I mean, you're from Siberia. But the tribe name reminds me of something. Yes, Sibiryak. So she pronounced it differently, so it sounded like a Polish word. Why are you saying it that way? I thought the word was Russian. In Russian it means someone from Siberia, but in Polish it has its own, very specific meaning. It's a word for political prisoners exiled to Siberia, and there were tens of thousands of them. The Siberak, in this case, means... Why was she using the name is a stupid question. Obviously to remind herself of things. So in this case... Which meaning do you identify with, the Polish or the Russian? My tribe name describes both of my legacies. My granny was a political exile and my grandpa was a Siberian indigenous. I use it because it speaks the truth. How did you become a werewolf? My grandpa saw that I had a soul of a wolf and started teaching me about the spirit world. She looked at me with her violet eyes. When the time was right, he guided me through the change. I didn't really remember my grandpa. My grandpa was telling me stories, but I forgot most of them. I forgot how he looked. You remembered more than you realize. How else would you know the high tongue? That was a good question. What about the Morning Wolf Mother? She's mighty and powerful. There was a tone of deep respect in Lisa's voice. Tell me more. She's old. Very old. We don't know when she first appeared here. I think she's the avatar of the forest. Excuse me for a moment. Maybe I shouldn't have gone out of house in this rain, because I'd be lucky if I won't have a clue by tomorrow. But then again, it will be fine. I'm sure of it. The avatar? An emanation, an embodiment. Like, she actually is the Pusha, you know? She's powerful, she knows stuff, and she knows how to find her way to people's heads. Lisa looked at me for a moment, deciding what to say next. I respect her, but sometimes I think she gets into Olga's head too much. Olga lets her in, and the wolf pushes. And I don't know. Maybe it's the right way to do things now. Well, yes, as we've seen, she is pushy. Just forced her way into our head and gave us +1 rage. I decided to keep my conversation with the wolf mother to myself. How did she come to Poland? That's a stupid question. She walked all the way from Siberia to here. Thanks. That was all I needed to know at the moment. Finally, Daniel, you can introduce yourself a little bit more? I asked Daniel if I could join his tribe, but he didn't understand the question. I'm a Red Talon, he said, as if it explained everything. Now, Red Talons, a tribe of almost entirely wolf-born Lupus Garu who aren't particularly fond of mankind and believe it is the cause of basically every worm-related problem. Some of them eat people in flagrant disregard for the litany, almost all of them want to exterminate us down to pre-Stone Age levels of population, and all of them are angry jerks about how much civilization sucks. So much so that their tribal weakness, mirroring the Glasswalkers, is an inability to recharge Gnosis inside of cities. So notoriously difficult to work with that they've become a common source of in-tribe villains for storytellers and are the tribe most commonly relegated to NPC status. Wanting to play one without a really good concept automatically makes you that guy. It's telling that their Forsaken counterparts, the Predator Kings, actually are straight-up villains. Well, the guys in here are of course talking about the New World of Darkness book, it being Werewolf the Forsaken, but we can skip out on that one. What are the Red Talons? It is the T-tribe of the Garu who are born as wolves. It is the tribe of Garu who are born as wolves. We usually don't mix with others, and we kill humans. But since I am the only one here, I decided that it was better to join the rest. It was a wise decision. It's better to have a pack than to be alone. There is always strength in numbers. I protect my folk better when there are more werewolves around. Your folk? Wolves. Yeah, I'm guessing we won't be dealing with him much. Didn't want to talk anymore, but I was too exhausted to bug them with personal questions. One thing is bugging me, I said. Why are there so many of you here? Suddenly everyone in Bieloveja is a werewolf, or what? You know nothing, cub, Olga laughed bitterly. A mere century ago there were dozens of packs in these forests. But none of the old guards survived the 90s, Lisa shook her head. We had to start from scratch. Until you showed up, there were only 6 of us, and the 3 of us not even local, Cornell pointed out. 2 packs too small for their own good. Anyway, before you're admitted to a tribe, you need to prove yourself. Prove myself? Hadn't I proven myself enough already? You went through your first change, Pat said. She was leaning on a tree nearby. And you know everything you need to know at the moment. But you have to go through the rite of passage. But you have to go through the rite of passage. Daniel rubbed against my flank, excited. A vision quest, Kim winked at me. And since we don't have time for tests, we need you to solve a real problem, Olga stepped in. Namely, we want you to find a way of ending this logging problem, Cornell said gently. So, how would you like to do it? They all looked at me in anticipation. I took my time, enjoying the moment. My body was buzzing with energy, ready to shift shape on the slightest sign of danger. My mind was clear. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do. We need to understand why the loggers are doing this, and make them change their mind. Kim looked unconvinced. Never mind the loggers. Kim made a dismissive gesture with her hand. We have to inspire the protesters. Lisa rolled her eyes. You're all blind and ignore our most powerful ally. There are many ancient spirits in the Pusha, and we should talk to them. There must be someone responsible for the shit in the Bieloveja here at the local level, I continued. I want to have a talk with them. Cornell bared his teeth in a predatory smile. I know exactly who we should talk to. Daniel beamed. Spoken like a true Philodox. You were born under a half moon, weren't you, Maya? Philodox. Those born under the half moon embrace balance between wolf and human, fury and wisdom, and act as judges and lawkeepers. Or as we can more charitably call them, tard wranglers. How did he know? I looked at him surprised. How did he know? Mom always told me that when she gave birth to me, the half moon was shining through the window, reminding her that this too shall pass. Half moon. You were a Philodox, Gaia's judge. Auspice, Philodox. Glory, 0 out of 10. Honor, 3 out of 10. And wisdom, 0 out of 10 for now. We have cast aside our human stats. Your place in the werewolf society will be determined by your renown. You can earn glory through defeating mighty enemies and succeeding at dangerous quests. You can earn honor by following your moral imperative and upholding the laws of the Garu. You can earn wisdom by acting efficiently and thinking well before you act. Your renown will change as you play, contributing to Maya's legend among the Garu. No pressure at all. Olga must have sensed my confusion. Come on, we have a lot to discuss, she patted my shoulder, and we have to find your phone and wallet. I nodded and followed her. I had to tie up loose ends in my old life. I'm sitting in a bus. The sun streaming through the window is making it hard to see. The narrow road cuts through a dense old forest. I remember doing something important, walking among the trees, looking for something, losing something I loved, gaining something unwanted. But then, I'm fully awake and the memories scatter away. We're almost there. I did some searching and she looks at me from over her phone. And this place is amazing. The last primordial forest in Europe. I'm excited to be here. I know, right? I'm not able to finish. I start to cough. I spit blood. My throat is sore. My lungs hurt. I need to stop the bus. I get up and shout to the driver, but I feel something sticky on my hands and torso. Something stopping me. Spiders! I'm crawling with small spiders. Thousands of them, weaving their cobwebs around me, the seat, around the seat, around everything. I try to get out. I trash at the window, but a few seconds later I am bound in a cobweb cocoon. There's a hiss. I hear a hiss. Then slowly, a long, dark, thin shape comes out of Bartek's mouth. A black snake that reeks of rotten meat, acid, and oil. Don't fight, Maya. You're already mine. Just like your grandpa. And then it kisses me. Well, I have an idea as to what he meant by that. Chapter 5, The Plan. However, this means we are 75% done with the game. However, I'm looking at the time, and I have something very important in the morning and throughout the day. So this is where we will need to call it for tonight. Hopefully we'll be able to finish the game by next week. And after that, who knows, we'll move on to the next in our Spooky Monday run-up, or the Spooky Month run-up. Maybe I will play those Vampire the Masquerade light novels that I mentioned, and it will be fine. But for right now, I'd like to thank you for attending, and I will see you all tomorrow, hopefully. Peace out.